Hey everybody, welcome back to my Wrenching with Rob channel, and today we're going to press on with the engine in the 73 Jeep's 232 inline 6. And we last time we put the intake manifold on and the head and the rocker assembly, our assemblies and the push rods and all that happy stuff and the carburetor. So today we're going to press on with all the ignition type stuff like spark plugs, points, spark plug wires, all that good happy stuff that makes it go bang. One of the things I did off camera is I installed our little electronic temperature sensor to back up the mechanical one, or maybe it's the other way around. The mechanical one is backed up by the electronic one, as that one's the mechanical one's probably a little bit more accurate than what the electronic one. So all the electronic one does is just sweep between C and H for cold and hot. Tied up some wires over there for the ignition system. So now we're going to get into the Das Book and go through and see what the tune-up specifications are, like the spark plug gaps, the point gap, and ignition timing and all that type of stuff. So we're wishful thinking at the moment. In other words, we think we're actually going to get to the point to where we can roll it over. But that'll probably be in a different video, so I'm still waiting on this bracket for the accelerator linkage here, or the accelerator cable. It's not really linkage because it's not a solid rod. But we're going to go ahead and press on with that, show you what we got going on here, how to gap spark plugs and things like that. And so we'll get the book. When we look at the book, if everybody can read or see this or not, I don't know. But I'm just going to point to it because it's in there, trust me. So a 6-cylinder 232 74, it says the plug gap should be 35 thousandths. And the point gap should be 16. I was always around, if you get it to 20 or so, I was always thought that that was pretty close. They are hydraulic, as we've talked about before. There's no things to adjust on the rockers like Chevrolets have. I think we've already beat that horse to death anyway. The dwell, wow, not too many people have heard of dwell. So I actually have a dwell gauge, and when we get it going, we'll actually check into that. And that's kind of, and if somebody can beat me up if I'm wrong, but that's how long the points are open. And it has to do with the gap as well. So looking at timing manual transmission, because look, they didn't have automatic transmissions back then evidently. 5 degrees before, I'm assuming that's what B is, before top dead center. And we're trying to do this at 600. For some reason, between 73 and 74, they lost 100 RPM. Couldn't even begin to tell you why. So anyway, we'll put the book back up here on the seat, and we'll go and get into gapping spark plugs, because unless you buy the super expensive NGKs that have the little custom guards that are on the ends, chances are these things, you know, they only sit in a cardboard box like this, and they can be highly susceptible to get beat up. And this down here, the reach, excuse me, not the reach, but the ground electrode, that can be bent so that it isn't at 35,000. So what we're going to use here is a spark plug depth gauge, or ground electrode gauge, whatever you want to call it. This is the bendy tool. This is the different thickness of gauges in between the ground electrode and the actual hot electrode here. So you can see here, maybe, I don't know if you can see that or not, but trust me, that one says 35, that one says 40, and that one says 45. So the object is, theoretically, to put this at 35 thousandths, should fit not tight where you can't get it through, and not loose where it just falls into place, but just a little bit of drag on there, and you're good to go. Now, you may have to either bend the electrode down or bend it out to adjust for that. Now, one of the other things you want to look at is make sure that that ground electrode is not like over here somewhere, because that can happen too, especially if you're using old spark plugs that may or may not have been used and you have no option. So you might want to look at that. On the old motors, before they had really good ignition systems, they'd have a lot of trouble, especially if you had some oil fouling with crap all up in here. And you see this one's brand new, so it's all nice and pretty. So I have done all of our spark plugs already off camera, because I'm sure that once you've seen one, you've seen them all. They're not that much different. So I'm going to put our nice pretty custom spark plug gauge excuse me, up here on top of the radiator support and grill, where I will hopefully not lose it down to the abyss that is in front of it. So we'll tip the camera down a little bit. We'll pop these spark plugs in and put a little tension on them, and then we'll work on the points and condenser and all that. Now I don't have new points for it. The old ones look pretty decent. I've checked the contacts. I'm pretty sure that they're happy enough to continue the use. It seemed to run okay before, or at least before it started showing signs of head gasket blown, that it was working okay. So we're going to start all these in there. Hopefully they will cooperate and go down for the most part, because for some reason it seems like anytime you need a tool, especially if it's a one-off tool like a 13/16 spark plug socket, it manages to go hide somewhere. I don't know if they're afraid of work or what. It seems like that's the thing nowadays, is people, or tools are afraid of work. I almost said people. We'll just leave that one there. But so I'm using a regular deep socket, which has no spark plug holding capabilities and doesn't really fit into this tiny little area very well. But they are starting, and the good part about it is you can pretty much get at it, all these spark plugs, without too much difficulty. Actually, I'd have to say no difficulty whatsoever. On your new cars, you'll be lucky to see the spark plugs. I'll imagine it sooner or later, in a gasoline fired engine, they're going to do away with spark plugs and find some other means of combustion. And I'm not talking about a diesel. I'm talking about a gasoline or petrol, or however you want to call it, fired engine. They'll have some kind of crazy system where they won't have these old sparkulators, as Vice Garage calls them. So now I get to do the never-ending crank, because of course they won't spin all the way in by themselves. Hey, this one's almost there. Hopefully we don't break them. Hey, that one's done. That one feels like it's done. This one's got a long ways to go. You can see that calibrated arm go there? Yeah. These older engines are pretty forgiving. Now, if this was my Marauder, I'd be torquing them, because those aluminum heads, if you don't get that exactly right and they start to back out, oh, I'm sorry, that's probably wiggling you all over there. If they start to back out, which maybe I've already had happen, and it shoots out, that's not fun. Been down that road before. Took out the threads. It made a big mess. So almost done. Okay, our spark plugs are in. I'm going to put this stuff over here where it's not in my way, because I get tired of things in my way. So a couple of things that we've done off camera is, I'm going to put you guys down in there so you can see a little bit better. So see if you guys can see this or not. So right here is the fuel pump. When we started working on this thing, this is the feed line coming from the gas tank. There was an inline fuel filter right through here, and I would rather have that fuel filter, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the pressure side, because I'd rather not interfere with the delivery, or excuse me, the delivery of the fuel to the fuel pump, just because I think it has to work pretty hard to create that suction to get it all the way up there. So what we've done is I've eliminated that nasty fuel filter that was here and just put a piece of straight line. Now here's our other end right through here. There's a good place for one, and I have a brand new one. I think that might be a little bit too large, but either way, we'll put a nice new one in there. I believe they had 2 fuel filters in here before. The other one is over here. It's one of these glass guys right here that theoretically you can clean. Oh look, it's got a little green overspray. I wonder where that might have come from. It actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. I don't see anything jumping out at me, but I think the reason that there was 2 fuel filters on here is, if you saw in one of my other episodes, the gas tank was severely compromised, and I'm sure it was full of rust. It had holes, literal holes in it where things had broken loose. So I'm going to stop rambling. I know, I'm sorry, I'm still talking. The next thing we're going to deal with is these points down here, and if you're familiar with breaker points, this was the early setup before we went to electronic ignition. So we'll get right down in there for a minute. So these things right here, between here and here, is your, I believe, if I remember my old teachings correctly, the primary circuit in the electrical or the spark plug or the ignition system, and then the actual high tension wire, or the, you know, where you see the spark going to the spark plug, that's your secondary set. So when this opens, it tells this to go, and I can't remember, I get all crossed. So I got a little bit ahead of myself in that I wanted to make sure that no craziness has happened here with the timing, as sometimes people can take the distributor out and then they won't get it back into the right spot, and they'll have to rotate the wires around on the cap in order to make it all work out properly so that it sparks, or the sparkulators and sparks jump through the wireless whenever this particular cylinder is lined up and is its happy position. So we're going to take out the #1 spark plug here, and we're going to spark time it, or at least get #1 on its top dead center compression stroke, because there's 2 strokes. There's one that's the exhaust stroke and one is the compression stroke, and we want the sparks to happen on the compression stroke. So what I'm going to do is put my cheater starter wire, because obviously I can't reach all the way to the key switch while we're trying to put my thumb over the spark plug. So I have to make sure that I'm on the starter. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, can you see that? Yep. So we explained what each one of these terminals do on the top. One does the starter, the other one does the bypass of the ballast resistor. And so what we're going to do now is jump the starter. So when I hit this to the positive, this thing should like attempt to start, or at least turn over. So what I'm going to do is hold my paw or my finger here over the #1 or the spark plug hole, to when it blows my finger off, then I know it's on the compression stroke and not the exhaust stroke. So let's see if I got the right one here. So when I go, oh yeah, see, it might get a little jumpy. That's the one. So I may have gone too far. Let's see if I can find the timing mark. It's got some good compression. I'm very happy about that. Is that it? Maybe. We'll stick the telltale device down the hole here and see where the piston's at. Yep, I think it's right there. So theoretically, if I take this distributor cap back off, let's get the book. The book always knows, theoretically. So we're back in the book. You might not be able to see that. We're going to look at the firing order, because I wasn't smart enough to actually mark them. So we have an inline 6-cylinder, engines through 74, point type ignition, and this one says inline cylinders, 6 cylinders, engine starting 75 with electronic. It looks like they both go clockwise. Well, wait a minute. Now, why does that one have a... Either way, it's 153624. 153624. But on this one, the number 1 is in a different spot. But it does have the little the fasteners. So theoretically, our rotor button is supposed to be pointing towards this right here. So just forward, stay book of this. So that should be number 1. So our rotor button should be somewhere right around in there. Let's see how close it really was. So we'll take our cap back off. Maybe. I guess you're supposed to line that up with the slot. Yeah, there you go. Yep, there's one. I'm really happy with myself that I remembered to put the rotor button in, because yeah, it might have happened before where we're troubleshooting a massive ignition problem and come to find out, forgot the rotor button. Makes a big difference. I'm here to tell you. And then there's those that have and those that will. Whoa, look at that. That is nowhere near the number 1. Interesting. So that could mean a couple of different things. Well, actually, to me, it can only mean one thing. That this is not, if we go by the book, it's calling this number 1. Now, we can do it a couple of different ways. We can pull out the distributor and reclock it, or we can just make that number 1 and then go around. But that might make it really hard for the next person to do this too. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. I think I'm just going to put it back in and unfortunately let the next guy mess with it. So that's number 1. We're going to call that number 1. Maybe my book's wrong. Maybe I don't have this right. But anyway, that's where we're going to start with number 1 and go from there. So we're going to put the distributor cap back on. Make sure that's on there so that it doesn't walk itself back off. Check it. Sometimes they don't always attach the way they want to. And it starts from front to back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we make that number 1, it's 1, 5. We're going to put, I think I had some brand new spark plug wires here somewhere. Yeah. 1, 5, so second to longest. I like to put these all the same length at the distributor end and then check the links on them. They never seem to work out the way you want it to, but we'll just go with it. This one looks pretty decent. Just seems like no matter what you do, they're always too long or too short. So actually in this one we want a little bit shorter one. So let's go not with the shortest one. This must be our coil wire here. We better take that guy out so he doesn't keep confusing us, or me anyway. So not the shortest one. Let's go with the medium one. So this guy will plug in here. Maybe. Yeah, that's what you want to hear. And we'll go right there. That's number 5. Whoops, not so much. And you want to hear it go clink? Well, it didn't do it, but I felt it. So 1, 5, 3. Let's do it a little different. Let's plug. Oh, look at that. I put him in the wrong spot, just like that. I already messed up. It already shot flames and did all kinds of angriness because I'm not very smart. I put it in the wrong spot. Put them like that. Put him around. We're going to try to make these pretty. It's not going to look pretty like that though. Put that guy on there. 1, 5, 3, 6. We're going to make him pretty long. Any of you guys that have know Jeeps pretty well probably know this firing order by heart. I can tell you Fords, but not Jeeps. I don't like that. Let's go like that. Let's put you up above. What was it? 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. So number 2, he's gonna be a super shorty. He's just a little guy. Only has to go a little ways. Cool. And then 4. So let's see if I did this right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. He's going to be a little shorty too. I skipped number 1 at the moment just because I have to put the spark plug back in. All right. So we'll put number 1 spark plug back in. Maybe. I can hit the hole here. There it is. Wow. Put a little tension on it. Go the wrench the right way. Put you over there. And then pop number 1 on there. Yeah, they seem like they're all in there pretty good. I wish they were just a little bit better as far as looking wise, but maybe if we twist them just a little bit, they'll look better. Now they're in there now. So now, theoretically, when we spark timed this, one thing I failed to say was the timing mark on the crank pulley was lined up with the timing marks on the front of the block. So that's why we knew that number 1 was really close or right on the money. According to the book, theoretically it's supposed to be over here, but that's really only somebody's got it a couple of teeth off. Maybe they pull it out or change something somewhere along the way, or like I said before, maybe the book's wrong or something. So I got to pull that out of there before it starts shorting out, and I don't know why the motor's turning over, because it actually did get a little bit close. So now the next thing we'll probably do is put the valve cover on. I've actually painted it. This should be pretty good. So I'll get that all prepped up and we'll bring it back when I'm about to set that on. So we got our valve cover. I'm retaining the original cork gasket because it's actually in pretty decent shape. So we're going to try to set this thing on there, maybe carefully, without. Wow, look at that! Actually went down there pretty good. And then we'll slowly tighten it down. Notice the super awesome Ford blue Go Fast paint there. This thing, there'll be no stopping it. So we'll start one in the front and one in the back, or somewhere close to the back, because I just don't feel like reaching all the way back there right now. I wish the rest of the motor would go this fast, but that valve cover and that intake manifold, there's no stopping that thing. Good, this thing's going to work out, maybe. So this wasn't to rebuild by any means. The main reason we took the head off was because of the head gasket leak. The rest of it, the motor ran pretty decent when we took it when we started this whole wiring project. So I'm hoping that it continues to run, or runs even better after we get it back together. It just blew a lot of steam or smoke or whatever you want to call it out the tailpipe and had the telltale smell of blown head gasket. I don't know if it got hot or what happened. Try to keep out of you guys' way. Not that it's really exciting to see me put valve cover screws down in here. Let's see if I can reach this one without super death or dropping it into the eternal abyss. Something like it went in there. Now there's a lot of people that will get on these valve covers and they will tighten these things until there's no tomorrow, like lug nuts. And the more you do that, the more you squish this cork gasket, or the valve cover itself isn't really that thick, and it will distort, and then you'll have valve cover leaks. This will probably leak anyway, but well, at least I told you so. I didn't put any gasket sealer or anything like that on there because who knows, I'll probably have to take it back off or something. It seems to be what happens is if I seal it down, then I have to take it apart and get a new gasket. Let me get right in your way there. Alright, so now the valve cover's on there, and we'll top it off with this nice rusty filler neck here. That'll make it go faster. And then somewhere underneath I dropped the positive crankcase ventilation tube, or at least what was being utilized as a PCV valve. I think it's right down here. Yep, it's right here. So we'll pop that guy in. I'm sure that gasket is just awesome. And I'm sure it'll interfere really nicely with that whole accelerator pump bracket when we go to put that back together. And if anybody works on these things that can tell me, for some reason there was some type of a bolt and nut set up on here, and I don't have any idea what it was for. I'm going to put it back on if this is the right one, because it was there. So that's how I found it. I don't know what it's for. See if we can find the right socket here. Luckily this time I had all the tools I needed. And have to go back to the box 100 times. I think it's to hold the baffles in up underneath there. So the valve cover's in, our temperature sensor's in, our ignition. I forgot one thing. Another probably fairly important item that will definitely prevent it from running is the coil wire. So we'll mash him in there. Maybe I can get it to go in. Wow. That's going to be a problem. That thing doesn't want to go in there at all. And then that number one spark plug wire too. Look at that guy, already popped out of there. We're not doing too well here at all. The spark plug wires. Let's make sure these are all, yeah, there's another one. I don't think these boots are working too well. That one's in. That one's in. That one's in. And that one wasn't. I think the boots are not sliding on the wires very well, and that's preventing them from going down into the cap and being seated properly. So we'll mash them in there. Yeah, see that coil wire popped right back off. What a nice guy you are. We'll put that. We'll see how long they stay on there, but this coil wire, he don't like to fit on there at all. So that's all done now. The ignition system set up. So with the exception of the temperature sending unit that goes on the front of the block here, all of the wiring is complete. I'm going to work on the thermostat next, but unfortunately, when I actually touched the picture over at O'Reilly's, I actually touched the picture of the thermostat gasket here and said I want that one, and then I get home and I get the wrong one. So my fault on that one, but I can't put the thermostat together until I get that. And I need a couple of nuts and bolts to finish off the exhaust. And then in the next, we'll probably be starting this here pretty quick. So, oh, and I have to return that distributor cap. I'll rotate you back up here for a minute. So that'll probably knock it off for this particular episode. The next episode, we'll either finish the gas tank or we will be starting it. So we'll see very soon. I'd like to try to have it running by this weekend. I'm sure the owner would like to have it back. It's been in my possession for a while now. It's taking up space, and I'd like to be able to get back on the other thousands of projects that I have going on. But I want to take this time to thank you for hanging out and watching me do dumb stuff here in the garage, and hopefully I provided some cheap, funny entertainment, or maybe somebody learned something. I don't know. But either way, thanks for hanging out. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Says YouTube, or tells YouTube that I'm not a bad person, and maybe they'll like me more. And have a good one, and we will talk at you next time.